Today we're going to talk about the number 3 most famous speedway rider of the 1970s in the United States. He was a gifted rider. He was a hard charger. He was just the kind of rider that everybody wishes they could be. He was born on Christmas Day, 1951, and he had a brother named Mike, and they were the BAST brothers. And Mike and Steve, they were just like good riders. They rode mini bikes as young people, young teens, and they raced like TT on the small CC motorcycles, and they were very successful. They won many trophies. They were gifted at an early age, and they were destined for success. They just had this love for motorcycles and racing. And in about 1968-69, when they started the Whiteman Stadium, the BAST brothers, they saw a sign saying there was Speedway at the Whiteman Stadium. And Steve and Mike, they got their Uncle Harlan and they said, "Uncle Harlan, take us to this Speedway. We want to see like what's happening here." And they saw the excitement of Speedway. And they immediately petitioned Harlan to get a Speedway bike for them. Harlan went out and got an old JAP Speedway bike, and they shared it. Mike and Steve, they shared the Speedway bike, and Mike would get done in one race and then they would refuel with methanol, and then Steve would get on the motorcycle and race, and they just shared that JAP the first season. And Mike was a little bit younger, so I'm not sure if he was even a legal age to race. He was a little guy, but he was still good. And Steve was a little bit more mature than Mike. You know, he was older, so he had a little bit of head start maturity-wise. And Steve did real well. He raced on the team racing, and Mike was still racing in it's called like a Class C division. It was like the lower division, learning. But Steve had a successful first year of Speedway. And then Harry Oxley and Jack Milne opened up the Costa Mesa Speedway at the fairgrounds in 1969, in the summer of 69. And that's where Steve started taking off. He wasn't really a marquee star until he started racing the small track at Costa Mesa. And he started winning. And he had a very hard charging style. You know, Steve was just a gifted rider. And he won the first United States Speedway Championship in that summer of 69. And he was famous. And he was so famous that he was, I believe, the second rider to race in Europe. He raced for the Wembley Lions in London for the season of 1970. And he raced only one season for the Lions. He came back home probably to make more money. And him and his brother Mike were very successful, and they did quite well. And Steve won his second United States Speedway Championship a couple years later in 1974. And he cemented himself as a star in the American Speedway scene. That was really the first year I remember Steve, and he wore those baby blue leathers and with that big white number 1 on his back. And when I was a little kid, I said, he must be good because he's a United States Speedway champion and he's got that big number 1 on his back. But that was his last championship, and Steve rode for a couple more years. And anytime Steve Bass got on that track, you know, he was a hard charger. And he was going to win, you know. And when Steve was on, nobody could beat him, including his brother Mike. He was so fantastic. Steve Bass was sensational. And I just loved watching him before the races and see his grit and determination, his intensity to win. And he'd go out there and win that race. And Steve Bass was just an exceptional talent. And he went ahead and retired to Auburn, California, with his brother Mike, and the whole family kind of moved up there. And he worked for the BAST Brothers Welding, and he worked there for a number of years and just was a good family man to his son Steve. And he just really took care of his family. He loved his family, he loved his wife. And sad to say, on October 30th, 2007, Steve sadly passed away at the age of 55. And that was really tragic, because it's hard to believe that somebody so talented could leave us so fast. And Steve left behind a very good legacy of success and determination and championship pedigree. And we never forget one of the greatest speedway riders of the 70s, number 6, number 1. He just was a talent that was hard to match because he was so good. And Steve was just a talented, amazing rider and a good dad and a good human being. And people all around, they like Steve. Hi. And Steve was just a gifted rider and just a better human being. But today we honor the memory of a fallen speedway rider, one of the true greats in the revival of the American Day Speedway. And who is that? It was amazing, Steve BAST.